Hey guys, tonight we're going back to the 14th century, but don't worry, you won't need a plague mask. Because in this timeline, the Black Death never happened. No rats, no fleas, no 25 million Europeans dying in horrific agony while doctors in beaked masks waved herbs like it was Febreze. Sounds like good news, right? Well, buckle up. History's about to swerve hard. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Hit that like button if you're into alternate histories with just a dash of existential dread. And comment below. If you could erase one historical disaster, what would it be? Now, dim the lights, wrap yourself in a cozy blanket, and prepare to time travel into a world that should be better, but somehow isn't. Let's begin. You wake up in 1350. The air smells like smoke, sweat, and boiled cabbage. But something's off. No morning bells, no stacked corpses, no carts piled high with "Bring out your dead." Because in this version of history, the Black Death never made it out of Central Asia. Europe is crowded, loud, and bustling with unwashed optimism. Cities are overflowing, fields are packed. And guess what? So are the landlords. Because without mass death, no one's giving up their property anytime soon. You, dear viewer, are not an heir to an empty manor. You're a serf, just like your father, and your father's father, and your father's father's goat. Here's the weird part. Without the Black Death, a lot of stuff you love never happens. No labor shortage, no worker rebellions. No worker rebellions, no wage increases. No wage increases, no middle class. And no middle class? Say goodbye to coffee shops, TikTok side hustles, and that one guy who calls himself a freelance sorcerer. Art? Slower. Science? Delayed. Renaissance? What Renaissance? With feudalism firmly in place, kings and clergy stay fat and powerful while peasants die, just a little less dramatically. Wild, right? Would you want to live in a world where the Renaissance never happened? Drop a black heart in the comments if you're team. Let the dark ages be darker. Or any emoji you like if you think some disasters might actually be necessary evils. So you try to make it through a typical day. You want bread? Prices are high. You want land? Good luck. You want to get out of farming and open a candle shop? A dream. See, after the real Black Death, so many people died that surviving workers were suddenly valuable. Wages went up. Feudalism started to crack. Innovation finally got its groove on. But in this world, the economy is like that one uncle at Thanksgiving. Overcrowded, underwhelming, and not going anywhere. And don't even think about healthcare. With no urgency to understand disease, doctors are still diagnosing you by the color of your urine and the position of Mars. Germ theory? Centuries away. The microscope? Still a dream. Antibiotics? You wish? You get a splinter in this world, and that's your origin story for becoming a ghost. Imagine trying to explain a modern hospital to a 14th century surgeon. So we have sterile gloves, MRIs, and anesthesia. Him. Anesthete. What now? Then he pulls out a saw and a very large glass of wine and says, "Bite down on this stick." Oh, and the church? Still running the show. Because in real history, the Black Death shook people's faith. Priests died. Prayers failed. The whole system looked very sus. But here, no pandemic means no crisis of faith. The church stays powerful, unquestioned, and fully in control of your education, your morals, and probably your haircut. That means no Reformation, no Enlightenment, no secular universities, and probably no YouTube channels questioning history at 3 a.m. But wait, you ask, what about the rest of the world? Great question. The Black Death didn't just shape Europe, it rewired global history. In this version of reality, the Ottoman Empire never gains as much power from post-plague destabilization. Asia's trade networks aren't interrupted the same way. Colonization? Slower to start. But when it does come, it might be even more brutal because Europe never had that reset button. Global demographics stay high, which sounds good until you realize they're ruled by the same old power structures for way longer. No plague means no radical social mobility. No radical social mobility means no one's funding wild new ideas like maybe the Earth orbits the sun. So your iPhone? Yeah, not happening. Best you get is a really nice sundial. And maybe, a slightly less awful way to die at 42. So here's the tragic twist. The Black Death was horrifying. It killed millions. It scarred a continent. But it also broke the old world, so something new could rise from the ashes. Without it, humanity might have stayed stuck in the mud of feudal stagnation for centuries longer. Sometimes terrible things spark necessary change. Sometimes the reset button is the only way forward. You wander through the bustling streets of Florence. It's 1480, but it doesn't feel like a Renaissance. There are no dazzling frescoes, no Da Vinci in a paint-stained smock having an existential crisis. The printing press, not catching on. Why? Because there's no desperate thirst for new ideas. No vacuum left by a crumbling church. No class of newly wealthy merchants funding art, science, and heretical manifestos. Books are still rare, chained to monastery shelves like pets that might run away. You want knowledge? You better speak Latin. And know a guy. Who knows a monk? Who owes you a favor? No plague, no empty seats, no new voices at the table. Meanwhile, Europe's monarchs are still enjoying the good life. Why reform tax codes when the peasants can't even read? Why bother improving cities when everyone's trapped in the same social class as their great-great-great-grandmother who churned butter until she died of winter lung? There's no rise of republics, no Dutch Golden Age, no British Parliament making cheeky demands for rights and representation. Without a deadly crisis shaking the status quo, feudal hierarchies just calcify, like the last slice of wedding cake in a royal fridge, immovable, tasteless, and vaguely threatening. Let's talk bodies. Too many of them. Without the plague's demographic purge, Europe hits a breaking point. Food demand soars. Farms split into useless strips. There's not enough land to go around. Every inch of earth is worked to exhaustion. Every forest cut. Every fish caught. You know that game where you stack blocks until it topples? That's medieval Europe now. Overcrowded cities. Famine creeping in. Not because of bad luck, but because there's no reset button to buy time. And let's not even get into sanitation. Without the psychological trauma of a plague, there's zero motivation to rethink hygiene. Chamber pots still flying out windows like it's a national sport. Jump ahead, 1492. Columbus still sails, but this time his sponsors aren't flush with cash and curiosity. Because in our plague-free timeline, Europe didn't just survive, it stagnated. Spain's Reconquista dragged on longer. Portugal's maritime ambitions fizzled. There's no sense of urgency to expand, trade, or explore when the home front is bloated with nobles and burdened by tradition. And when they do reach the Americas, it's not with sleek caravels and muskets. It's with outdated ships, poorly armed crews, and no understanding of germs weapons. Ironically, the indigenous populations may have a fighting chance. Or maybe a different empire altogether finds them first. China, perhaps, or a still powerful Mongol remnant that never fractured. Suddenly, the globe tilts a different way. By the 1600s, you'd expect telescopes, compasses, early theories of gravity. In our world, Newton's sitting under trees, inventing physics between plague lockdowns. But here, science is still shackled to astrology and divine will. Why challenge the heavens when the church is still the authority? Why question nature when it's all God's plan? You try explaining the periodic table to someone who still believes in the four humors. They just hand you a leech and mutter something about your imbalanced bile. And remember, without desperate public health crises, there's no push for sanitation, epidemiology, or anatomy. You're more likely to get bled out with a rusty knife than cured by anything resembling medicine. Now let's slow it down. It's 1620. You wake up in a wooden bed that squeaks with every movement. Your house is one room, cold, damp, one window. No glass. Just a wooden shutter and the sweet smell of your neighbor's goat. You eat boiled grains every morning. Same thing for dinner. Meat? Rare. Spices? A myth. Your biggest excitement of the day? Trying not to die from stepping on a nail. You live where you're born. Marry who your parents choose. Die within 10 miles of where you took your first breath. And without the disruption of the plague, that cycle is so much harder to break. Because tragedy isn't just horror, it's also a crack in the wall. A moment when the old world falters, and the new one can slip in. The Black Death was one of the worst tragedies in human history. It killed indiscriminately, poor, rich, pious, corrupt. But it also did what no revolution could have. It leveled the playing field, if only for a moment. It made kings fear fleas. It made peasants rethink God. It made thinkers question everything. And in the rubble, a new world, flawed, yes, but faster, freer, fiercer, began to form. But in the world you're standing in now, none of that happened. The system held. The wheel kept turning. And you're still at the bottom. Still wondering what might have been if just one ship from Crimea had carried a plague. If the fire was lit inside a crumbling peasant hut, and the story is about how you're still stuck there 400 years later. You wake up groggy. It's 1750. You're not in a factory. You're not hearing the grind of machines, the hiss of steam, the clatter of tools. Instead, chickens, damp straw, the faint smell of wet wool and fermented turnips. Why? Because the Industrial Revolution hasn't started yet. That's right. No spinning jenny, no steam engine, no coal-blackened skyline over Manchester or London. A2. Because all the precursors, surplus labor, new capital, technical curiosity, they needed a world shaken up and restructured. They needed plague-sized disruption. But you're still in a cottage industry, literally, weaving wool by hand, by firelight. Your hands are calloused, your back aches. You've heard rumors of machines, sure, but no one has the wealth, the risk appetite, or the manpower shortage to make that leap. Without the mass die-off that scrambled economies, no one had to innovate. So they didn't. You want to read? Tough luck. Public education hasn't caught on. Universities are still elite playgrounds for nobles and clergy. There's no Enlightenment boom, no widespread literacy campaign, no little village schoolhouse where a pipe-smoking man in a tweed coat teaches you about astronomy and poetry. Instead, it's the Bible, maybe, if your Lord allows it. And if the priest doesn't get nervous about you asking too many questions. Because you know what mass death teaches a society, we need people who can think, adapt, learn fast. But in your no-plague reality, the status quo never got that memo. So you're taught to obey, not to question. Let's visit Paris. Not the one you're imagining. No Eiffel Tower, no smoky cafes where revolutionaries argue about Rousseau. No poets, no painters. It's quiet. Too quiet. Not in the peaceful way, but in the stagnant way. The buildings lean awkwardly. The streets are muddy, and they stink of horse droppings and rotted food. Commerce is sluggish. Politics is hereditary. Ideas are whisper thin. There are no salons, no Voltaire. No women debating metaphysics in candlelit rooms while sipping cheap wine and overthrowing monarchies with sarcasm. Because without the shock of mass death, there's no hunger for change, no revolution, no declaration of rights. The French king still believes he's chosen by God, and the people still believe he's probably right. Now let's skip across the Atlantic. Or in this case, not skip, because colonization has been slow, fragmented, and far less motivated. The American colonies? Still sparsely populated, still hugging the coast, still under heavy monarchic control. Without the economic and philosophical upheaval post-plague, there's no enlightenment to inspire revolutionaries. No Locke whispering about life, liberty, and property. No Boston Tea Party. George Washington. Probably a retired tobacco farmer who still bows to the king. The United States of America? More like that cluster of British outposts that occasionally complain about taxes. Let's rewind again. You're back in your village. Same cottage, same damp floor. You're 45 years old, ancient by local standards. You've had 8 children, 3 survived. The village midwife still thinks birth is influenced by the moon's mood. Your son has a cough, it might be the night lung. The solution? A poultice made of crushed beetles and the blessings of St. Erasmus. You try to imagine a better life. One where towns grow into cities, where machines lighten your load, where ideas crack through tradition like thunder. But in your timeline, that spark never came. One evening, a peddler passes through town. He tells stories of a distant kingdom where people bathe regularly, where lights burn without fire, where machines spin cloth in minutes and carriages move without horses. He says he dreamed it after a terrible sickness swept through a far-off land, and afterward everything changed. You laugh, shake your head, and return to your hearth. Silly dreamer. But as you fall asleep that night, you wonder, what if one day a ship from the east had brought something deadly, and in its shadow, the world had woken up? We've built the bones of a world where the Black Death never happened. Now let's live inside it. You're sitting in a wooden chair by the fire. The logs crackle softly, casting a flickering orange across the uneven stone walls of your cottage. Smoke curls lazily up the chimney. You sip a warm broth, mostly water, touched with turnip and a memory of meat. You stare into the fire and wonder quietly why nothing ever changes. The world around you still feels old. Not in the charming cobblestone way, in the heavy way. Like it's been held back, like it's waiting for something to break. There are no great machines, no railroads, no cities stretching up toward the sky. The noble families that ruled in your grandfather's time, they still rule now. You know their names better than your own family tree. At the local church, Father Henrik says this is how it's always been, and how it should be. But sometimes, just sometimes, you hear things. It starts with whispers. A traveler comes through your village, face half hidden under a wide hat. His horse is thin, his coat is old military issue, one you don't recognize. His accent is strange, familiar words twisted, like he's learned them secondhand. At the tavern, he speaks of cities you've never heard of. He says they're hidden, built in forests no map dares show, lit with lamps that don't burn oil, ruled by people who don't bow to anyone. You ask, where? He smiles, but his eyes are tired. Far away, he says, or maybe far ahead. You laugh it off. But that night, as you lie in bed under rough linen sheets, you hear something outside. Not a wolf, not wind, a hum, low, metallic. Gone before you sit up. A month later, your cousin, who lives 2 villages over, sends you something. Oh, a book. Strange enough, no one in your family reads. But the book is stranger. The cover is leather, but embossed with a symbol you've never seen. A circle, a triangle, and a tiny silver dot. Inside, the text is in perfect tiny print, not handwritten, not block pressed, as if it came from a machine. There are diagrams, engines, maps, a city floating in the clouds. You show it to Father Henrik. He takes it with calm hands, smiles. And the next morning, the church is locked for repairs. The book never comes back. Your cousin disappears. One winter, your neighbor, old Mathis, falls ill. You walk to the nearest apothecary, 20 miles south. You've done this journey before. You know the road, the turns, the trees. But halfway through, the path changes. There's a fork you don't remember, a stone marker half buried in snow. And down the left path, a town, small, too clean. The houses are made of something smooth, Not wood, not stone. Windows without panes, light without fire. And people. They smile too long. Their clothes have no stitching. Their hair never seems to move. You ask where you are. They give you a name that sounds like nonsense and music at once. You try to leave, but you can't remember which way you came. Eventually you make it home, or somewhere close to home. The trees look the same, but your village is different. The chapel's bell tower is gone. The old well is filled in. People act normal, but off. They call you by name, but you don't recognize them. Even your sister has a new scar she can't explain. And every so often, behind a barn or in the woods, or just beyond the fog, you glimpse something. A shimmer. A figure that winks out as soon as you focus. A thin line across the sky like a metal bird that never flaps. A sound like gears clicking, ticking, calibrating. Something wants to happen. Something is trying to move forward. But the world keeps getting stuck. As if it's caught in a loop. As if time itself has a fever it can't sweat out. One evening, you're helping rebuild a forge after a fire. Beneath a collapsed wall, you find a metal box. Sealed tight. No lock, no keyhole. But when you touch it, it opens. Inside, a black disc. Smooth, cold, engraved with fine lines like rivers in reverse. And a note, handwritten. To whoever finds this, we tried to fix the timeline, but it keeps collapsing. The Black Death was supposed to burn the old world down. Without it, the future won't form. If you're reading this, it may already be too late. You blink. Your hands are shaking. And for the first time you realize maybe this world isn't real. Maybe it was a patch, a stalling mechanism, a holding cell for a species that was meant to break its chains. Days later, you return to the strange village, the one with clean houses and silent people. But it's gone. In its place, scorched earth, as if something exploded from the inside out. The air smells like ozone and sorrow. You find one thing left behind, a journal, written in perfect English. It details experiments, timelines. It refers to Plague Gate Alpha, a mechanism that malfunctioned in 1347. Something about delayed detonation. The last entry reads, "They weren't ready to die, so they never truly lived." Now you see the world differently. You notice the repetitions, the conversations that loop, the birds that don't fly south, the children that never grow. You understand. History broke. When the Black Death never came, time itself got stuck. The natural order of collapse and rebirth was interrupted. Entropy paused. Revolution choked. And now, you're living in a world that refuses to update. A glitch, a holding pattern. And somewhere, beyond the fog, past the towns that fade in and out, someone's still trying to fix it. Someone who knows that progress requires pain. That sometimes a plague must come not to destroy humanity, but to unlock it. You return to your village, or at least the version that pretends to be your village. The faces are familiar, but the air feels heavier, the shadows longer. People speak slower, as if the words are being passed down from someone else's mouth. You decide to visit the old church again, not out of faith, but out of suspicion. Father Henrik is nowhere to be seen. The door is unlocked. Dust chokes the air. Candles are still burning, though no one has lit them. And behind the altar, tucked behind a tapestry of St. Erasmus holding a ship's wheel, is a wooden trapdoor you've never noticed before. It creaks as it opens. You descend, the stairs winding in a tight spiral. The air grows colder, damper. You taste iron on your tongue. Then, stone, a cavern hollowed out long ago. And shelves, row after row of books, journals, tablets, some wrapped in animal skin, others in glass. On the far wall, a mural, painted in a style you don't recognize. A skeletal figure, faceless, stands in a field of fire. At his feet, cities bloom like flowers. Above him, a clock, all 12 hands pointing to midnight. You step closer and read the inscription carved beneath. Death was the gardener. Without him, the soil hardened. In the oldest part of the underground library, you find plans, not religious scrolls, schematics, detailed layouts for something called a stasis engine, pages filled with strange equations, mechanical drawings, even notes in languages you've never seen, some that twist and loop like vines, others sharp as thorns. But one diagram haunts you, a globe surrounded by gears, wires, and levers. Underneath, in perfect modern English, stabilized timeline, V113, last clean loop, containment holding. Do not let plague events initialize. Cycle must remain static. You stare at it for minutes. You realize something horrifying. This world, your world, isn't just stuck. It's maintained. There are people, or machines, working even now to keep things from changing. Not naturally, but artificially. As if history itself has been locked down, kept safe from the chaos of transformation. You start to wonder, if the Black Death was a mistake that never happened, what was supposed to come after it? You begin to pay closer attention to your neighbors. Old Mathis hasn't aged a day in 5 years. He still tells the same stories, word for word, says the same prayer before meals. His limp, which he got falling off a ladder in '96, is still in the same leg, still just as bad, still just as exaggerated. You ask him about it. He blinks, smiles, pauses, and says, "Which year was that again?" But his eyes, there's something behind them, like a window with the curtains drawn too tight. You start watching others, children who don't grow, newlyweds who never argue, the mayor who's always 42, always wearing the same slightly stained collar, always giving the same speech at the harvest festival. It hits you. They're not living, they're repeating. You're not sure if you've escaped the loop or simply become aware of it. Word reaches you months later from a passing hunter deep in the north, past the forest line where no roads go. There's something under the mountain. Not ruins, a machine. It hums even in winter. No doors, no visible power. Just a smooth black dome half buried in ice. It pulses faintly, like a giant sleeping heart. Birds don't nest near it. Animals avoid the valley. The sky above it is always cloudy. You travel there. It takes weeks. But when you arrive, you know you've seen this shape before. In the schematics, in your dreams. Etched into its side is a single phrase. V113. Anchor engine, time lock holding. You place your hand against it. The hum rises. And for just a second, just a breath, you see things that should never be. A train with no wheels racing across a desert. A man in a silver suit climbing stairs that lead into the clouds. A city inside glass. A girl with wires in her eyes whispering, "We weren't supposed to forget." Then it's gone. The snow falls. The mountain sleeps. And you are alone again. Back home, a man waits for you. He says his name is Verdun. Wears a long coat with too many buttons. Carries no bag, no horse, just a cane that clicks louder than it should. He says he's a temporal cartographer. You ask what that means. He smiles like a man who's been tired for a long, long time. I used to map possible timelines, roads history could take, until one day one of those roads was blocked, manually, repeatedly. You don't speak, you're not sure you can. The plague, he says, sipping tea you never offered. It wasn't a punishment, it was a filter, a fire break. Terrible, yes, but it cleared the rot, gave room for something new. When it didn't happen, the future tried anyway. It pushed, but the old world was too thick, too stubborn. So the systems that run beneath our reality, he stops. Well, they chose to preserve instead of evolve. You ask, why me? Why am I seeing this? He leans forward. Because you noticed. That's the only qualification. You notice the repetition. And then he vanishes. No door opened. No footsteps faded. Just gone. You begin to collect the drawings of children, little sketches on parchment, on walls, in dirt. Some depict flying machines. Others show cities with lights in the sky, domes over oceans, ships that sail without wind. One drawing makes your blood run cold. It shows a globe, half red, half black. Over it floats a single sentence written in a child's unsure hand. The dead were supposed to feed the dawn. Another child, mute, carves symbols into rocks. The same symbols you saw in the hidden library. Symbols that predate any known language. The children aren't scared. They say they dream of a woman in gray, with no eyes, who tells them stories about a world that's trying to be born, but keeps getting interrupted. They call her Mother Reset. You ask one child, where is she now? The child shrugs. She's waiting for the gate to crack. Then you hear it. News from the eastern cities. A sickness. Not deadly, but strange. People forget things. Whole days vanish. Some towns report mirrors that reflect places they've never been. Others say the moon no longer rises in the right place. Doctors call it collective hysteria. Priests call it judgment deferred. The farmers say nothing. They've started burning their fields in silent ritual. You dream of the skeleton in the mural. Only this time he moves. And behind him, the clock has cracked. You're lying in bed. The candle's flame sways gently with your breath. Outside, there's a distant horse clop, maybe a drunken bard humming something off-key, and the occasional creak of wood settling. This is the 17th century, but it's not our 17th century. It's the untouched timeline. The Black Death, still just a future that never was. And tonight, you're not just a guest in this alternate world. You're something more dangerous. An observer who knows it's all too perfect. The cities are clean, suspiciously clean. Not just public bathhouse clean. We're talking manicured street clean. Merchants sweeping cobblestones. Public servants paid to collect night waste. Not just throw it into the street with a hearty, gardy-loo. Remember how in our timeline sanitation was an afterthought? Well, here, it's an obsession. Even the alley cats are polite. But here's the thing. The more polished the city, the more you notice what it's hiding. Like the children. Quiet. Too quiet. Not the shrieking chaos you'd expect. They speak in full, fluent Latin. The kind of Latin that makes modern scholars sweat. Or the birds. They don't chirp in the morning. They chant, in rhythm. Gregorian. You're walking down a marble corridor. Yes, marble, in a merchant's home. And every footstep echoes like it's waiting for a secret to be whispered. Then someone bumps into you. Their hands are gloved. You apologize. They nod but say nothing. And when they walk away, they leave behind a faint smell of ink and blood orange. This isn't just progress. It's curated progress. Designed, intentional, controlled. You feel it. Someone or something is steering this world. You find yourself invited to the Great Royal Library of Altdorf. Not Alexandria, not London. Altdorf, capital of what was once a minor German duchy, now the nucleus of the enlightened empire of Europa Universalis. Inside there's a warmth, velvet drapes, oak floors, bookworms that live in peace instead of feasting on pages. The librarian wears a robe lined with gold thread, and, is that a mechanical eye? You ask for a book. She doesn't ask which. She stares, tilts her head, says, "It's already waiting for you." You're led to a room labeled Speculative Chronology, Classified Scrolls. Inside, maps you've never seen. One of them bears your world's outlines. Our real timeline. It's labeled Pathway 37C, Interrupted Plague Timeline, Chaotic Variant, Rejected. You freeze. Rejected? The candlelight flickers. Behind you, the librarian speaks. So softly, you're not sure if you heard it at all. Your curiosity makes you dangerous. Days pass, or maybe it's weeks. You've taken to walking without purpose, through vineyards that bloom out of season, through villages where no one ages, and through towns where clocks have no hands. You're tired, but not sleepy. Hungry, but not starving. Eventually, you reach a cliffside monastery. High stone towers, stained glass with shifting images. Yes, shifting. One moment it shows a plague doctor, next a crowned woman with a sword. The monks take you in without question. They give you warm soup, bread that's always fresh, and let you sleep in silence. But the dreams come, of rats, not black, but white, glowing, whispers in languages you've never learned but understand perfectly. You ask a monk, Brother Anselm, what the dreams mean. He doesn't answer. Instead, he lifts his sleeve, tattooed on his arm. Cohort X, maintainers of the anti-plague timeline. You blink. He nods. And just like that, the illusion frays. You are summoned by who you don't know. The messenger simply says, they have questions. You're led to a subterranean hall beneath the oldest cathedral in Bruges. Stone arches, echoes, candles that burn with black flames. There are 13 figures in dark robes. You can't see their faces. They speak in unison, like a chorus from some ancient tragedy. What gives you the right to wander our clean world, stranger? You try to speak. They interrupt. You come from chaos, from filth, from 37C, a world that needed death to evolve. Their voices rise. You are the echo of a broken branch, the rot we pruned. One of them steps forward. He lifts a hand, thin, ancient, skin like dry parchment. The Black Death was not an accident. It was a decision, one your world accepted, one we denied. And suddenly you understand. This world is not lucky. It's engineered, not just to survive without the plague, but to thrive by preventing it, at all costs. Even if that means altering the past, even if that means eliminating you. You run, not because you're in danger, but because you feel the weight of knowing. You find yourself in a chapel at dawn. Light pierces through windows painted with impossible constellations. At the altar, there's a door. It hums, carved into it. Exit route 37C. Do not re-enter without clearance. Do you go back? Do you stay? Behind you, the world you thought was a utopia now feels like a polished coffin. Ahead, the broken, messy, unfiltered chaos of your original timeline. But at least, it's yours. You place your hand on the handle. The brass is warm, like it's been waiting for you. And in that moment you wonder, was the Black Death truly a tragedy? Or was it a necessary evil? You did not open the door. Or maybe you did. Or maybe time doesn't work the same here anymore. Because now, you're somewhere else. Somewhere between timelines. You awaken in a chamber that feels like a museum, but not one you'd recognize. There are no ropes, no labels, no glass. Just objects, on display. A knight's helm with no visor, just an empty, polished inside. A quill writing in a book that floats gently in the air. A globe of the earth, but the continents are in the wrong places. And then, a mirror. You step closer, and you see yourself. Only it's not you. Your reflection is wearing robes of deep blue and silver. Its eyes are glowing faintly. Its hands move slowly, as if underwater. And most chilling of all, it smiles at you first. You blink, and it's gone. The mirror is ordinary again. Just glass. You're not in a city, not anymore. You're in the archive of lost timelines, and you're not alone. She appears without a sound. A woman in an ivory coat, eyes the color of frostbitten stone, and hands that never stop moving, assembling puzzles, sorting scrolls, rearranging pieces of forgotten lives. She says, "Welcome to the echo chamber. You're not supposed to be here," but then again, neither was I. You ask her who she is. She pauses, and whispers, "In your world, I died in 1348. In this one, I kept living." She takes you to a chamber carved from crystal, where timelines are not read. They're sung, voices, echoes, of civilizations that could have been, had one plague or war or famine turned slightly to the left instead of right. And then she shows you a scroll. It's titled Timeline Zero, Earth Untouched, the original thread. You ask her what's on it. She simply says, curiosity killed your cat, but here it can erase your ancestors. You're sent away, not rudely. She simply looks at you and says, go south, seek the merchant. He deals in what-ifs. It's a long walk, through forests that don't appear on any map, past villages where no one speaks, only gestures, past statues of kings whose reigns never happen. Eventually, you reach a caravan pulled by nothing. It floats above the grass, gliding like a dream. Inside, the merchant is draped in layers of velvet, with a beard made of wire and eyes that never blink. He sits at a table filled with hourglasses, all tipped sideways. You've come to trade, he says. You protest. You didn't bring anything. He smiles sadly. You've brought the only currency that matters, awareness. He offers you choices. A world where Rome never fell. A world where Da Vinci built the first plane in 1492. A world where no humans ever existed. And then, he lifts a small black box. Inside it, a tiny replica of the bubonic bacterium, preserved, harmless. This, he says, is the origin of everything you fear and everything you understand. Do you want to destroy it? You hesitate. Because if you do, you don't just change the past. You destroy what made us human. You leave the merchant. His caravan dissolves behind you like fog. It's night now. A festival is underway in the valley below. Lanterns float without strings. Music plays with no musicians. People wear masks, but not to hide their faces. They wear masks of people who never lived. You see a man laughing with a stranger who looks just like him, down to the scar on his lip. You see a child chasing a balloon that turns into a dove midair. You see a woman dancing with a ghost who says nothing. But somehow, you know they were once lovers in a timeline that never made it past 1450. Then the dancing stops. All at once. Every masked person turns to you. Their mouths don't move, but you hear them all. You're the one who noticed. The lights go out. You wake again. In a tower, surrounded by clocks, all broken, all ticking in reverse. There's an old man here, a horologist. He builds timelines the way others build watches. He says, the Black Death was not a catastrophe. It was a release valve. He winds up a small device that whirs and hums. You see images float above it. People helping each other during the plague. Medical knowledge forced to evolve. Peasant revolts that changed feudal laws. A Europe forged in fire and resilience. You think suffering is cruel, he says, but sometimes mercy breeds stagnation. He places the device in your hand. In your world, they learned to survive. In this one, they were spared and forgot how. Your return to the modern day. This alternate modern day, the one where the plague never came. The buildings are taller, the skies are clearer, the streets are safer. But the people? They speak in perfect tones. They smile too often. And none of them question anything. You visit a museum. One exhibit is titled, Human Emotion, a Study in Ancient Chaos. You touch the glass. Inside are recorded emotions. Rage, heartbreak, desperation. A robotic docent informs you. These have been mostly cured. The new mind is superior. And then you feel it. Cold, clean, lifeless. This world didn't survive the Black Death. It dodged it. And in doing so, it never grew a soul. The camera drifts across a silver horizon. Cities gleam like polished glass. Rivers flow without waste. And birds fly in perfect geometric formations. No wind, no mess, no mistakes, and no mystery. This was the utopia that bloomed where the Black Death never struck. At first glance, it looks like paradise. But paradise, you soon realize, is too clean to be alive. A soft chime wakes you in the morning. Not from a clock, but from a pulse built into your wall. The room is bright without needing lamps, warm without needing blankets, and eerily scentless. Even the air feels artificial. There's no hunger, no aging, no disease. Everyone is healthy. Everyone is content. A voice in your room speaks, neutral, androgynous, calm. Good morning, observer. Your levels of curiosity exceeded safe parameters yesterday. You are advised to engage in calmness conditioning today. Shall we begin? You don't respond. You pull on soft gray clothes left at the foot of the bed. No wrinkles, no color, no identity. Outside, people tend to the gardens of temperament, lush, symmetrical plots of engineered flora designed to balance human moods. Roses don't grow here. Too sharp, too dramatic. Tulips don't bloom either. Too short-lived. Instead, emotionless vines wind through air-conditioned pathways. Every flower is perfectly neutral. Pleasant, forgettable. You watch a woman trim a hedge that looks like a smile. She trims it again, and again, until it's just flat. You follow a group of children, uniformed, silent, hands behind their backs, as they enter a vast, domed structure, the Hall of Tempered Knowledge. Inside, no books, no chalk, no questions. Each child sits in front of a light beam, eyes wide open, absorbing pre-approved knowledge. Facts without theories, history without uncertainty, science without error. A mural above them shows an image of a world map, but it's not drawn with borders. It's drawn with solutions. The slogan underneath reads, "Where there was once pain, we install peace." One child raises her hand. You instinctively lean forward. But a guide, smooth-faced, smile unblinking, gently lowers the child's arm. Let's not indulge nostalgia for chaos. They whisper something into her ear. She does not speak again. In a district called Stillhaven, there is a building shaped like an enormous teardrop of glass. You enter. The floor is mirrored, the ceiling black. The exhibits are empty frames, each one labeled with names of people who were never born. No plagues meant no upheaval. No upheaval meant no shifts in power. No shifts meant some dreams never happened. The girl who would have cured a new disease in 1702, she never existed. The poet who would have written the anthem that ended a civil war in 1820, unborn. Because their great-great-grandparents never had to fight, or flee, or fall in love under tragic stars. Everything here is a ghost of a possibility. And you realize with a strange ache that progress came without passion. Because in a world where nothing hurt, nothing mattered. A strange alley, dimmer than the others. Faint static buzzes in the background. You meet him there, an old man in tattered layers of coats, eyes burning with something rare. Unfiltered memory. They call me the Crasher, he croaks, because I remember the timeline before. You ask him how. He grins, nearly toothless. I was a cartographer, the old kind, drew maps by hand. One day I got too curious, found a hidden archive from 1347. Scrolls, drawings, stories of the plague. I read them all, and I started to feel something strange. You ask what he felt. Loss, he says, and grief, and beauty. The kind of beauty that only makes sense when it's fragile. It cracked this perfect shell they built around us. He shows you a faded page. A family portrait from 1350. A mother, a father, 3 children, and a small black X over the father's face. They didn't survive, he whispers, but they lived. We don't anymore. We just continue. Then guards come. Not soldiers, just caretakers in white. Smiling. Thank you, citizen, they say to him. Your burden of memory has been heavy. Let us lighten it. He doesn't resist. He closes his eyes. And just before they touch him, he says, don't trust the gardens. That night, you sneak into the central greenhouse. Its gates unlocked as if inviting trespass. Inside, it's beautiful. But it's also unnatural. You see trees with bark too smooth, too clean. Leaves that rustle without wind. A strange hum from the roots. And in the center, a vast flower bed pulsing with light. No soil, just glowing threads that pulse under each blossom. They look like veins. You kneel to touch one of the flowers, and the world tilts. Suddenly you see visions, not of your past, but of the world that might have been. Fields burning in the wake of the plague, and farmers rising from ash to build anew. Doctors dying by the dozens, only to inspire revolutions in medicine. Children orphaned, who became philosophers, artists, heroes. Pain, suffering, and yet humanity. You pull your hand back, the flower wilts immediately. Behind you, a voice speaks. You shouldn't be here. It's the woman in ivory, the one from the archive. Her face is softer now, tired. I tried to warn them once, she says. Tried to bring back the idea that imperfection has value. They erased those years instead, edited the centuries. You ask what this place truly is, she replies. A garden can be beautiful, yes, but if it's pruned too often, nothing ever evolves. In this world, humans became orchids, elegant, still, fragile, and rootless. You sit in silence together. And then she leans in and says something chilling. The Black Death didn't destroy us. It defined us. We feared it. We fought it. We changed because of it. Without it, we became this. She places a small seed in your hand. Plant it in a place they don't watch. Let something real grow. And she vanishes. You sit in a room where time breathes slower. It's warm, strangely warm for a city that once reeked of rot and dread. Outside your window, the mechanical clack of hooves over polished cobblestone sets a rhythm. Not the frenzied gallop of plague carts. Not the silence of fear. No, this is the confident trot of a city unafraid of death. You watch as a clockmaker adjusts the hands of a brass tower clock, perched like a mechanical deity atop his ladder. And you blink. Because something isn't right. Not wrong exactly, just too precise, too clean. The people walk like gears in a well-oiled mechanism. Shops open at the exact stroke of 9. Candles in windows dim in unison. Even the milkmaids have schedules engraved in bronze plaques by their doors. Efficiency, your guide tells you, handing you a slip of parchment with your itinerary printed in ink so dark it gleams. We owe it to our uninterrupted civilization. No Black Death, no massive interruption of progress, no catastrophic pause to human momentum. And so you learn society built itself like a clock, with laws tighter than corsets and streets cleaner than a surgeon's bench. You try to improvise, step into a bakery 5 minutes early. The door doesn't budge. A metal shutter slides down with a hiss, and a clock-faced automaton turns toward you from a nearby alley. It doesn't speak, just ticks. Welcome to the age of hyper-order, an era where the death that never came made room for something else. A world so obsessed with living, it forgot how to feel alive. Art? Still exists, but not like you remember. You stroll into a gallery. The walls are lined with portraits, all flawlessly proportioned. Golden ratios, polished to a shine. But something's missing. Emotion. Every face is a study in symmetry. Every landscape, perfect gradients, ideal angles. A museum curator whispers proudly, "We eliminated the chaos of suffering from creativity. No death, no angst, no distortion." You nod slowly. And you feel nothing. You duck into a library. Maybe books will rebel. They don't. The shelves are categorized to absurdity. Agrarian Evolution, subsection B, row 14. Wheat Yields in Non-Plague Adjusted Territories, volume 72. You pick a random tome. The pages smell like sterile parchment and ink distilled from logic. And then your hand brushes something different. Old leather, worn spine, a book not filed correctly. You flip it open. Inside a poem, unmetered, raw, written in desperate ink. They never died, so they never broke, so they never healed. So we are whole and hollow. You look around. No one's watching. You tuck it inside your coat and keep walking. Night falls with mechanical precision. The street lamps ignite in perfect rows. But someone knocks at your door 5 seconds too early. A child. Wide eyes, dirty fingernails. hair too wild for this place. She whispers, "Want to see where the broken ones live?" You follow, past alleys that aren't on maps, beneath grates that should be sealed, into a world not oiled, not timed, just human. Here you find the artists who don't fit, the dreamers who cry, the lovers who write messy sonnets in cheap ink. They call themselves the anachronists. They mourn the plague. Not because they wanted death, but because they miss mess, tragedy, chaos, the human sloppiness that made music ache, that gave painting its smear, that made laughter sharper than precision could ever allow. You sit with them, listening to off-key lullabies and watching flawed shadows dance on cracked brick. And then you ask the question, how did this happen? The eldest anachronist leans in. She's missing 3 teeth and smiles like she knows secrets. They say the plague just never came, but what if it was stopped? You blink. How? Not how, who? The room stills. She lowers her voice. There are rumors. The Clockmakers Guild, founded 2 years before the plague would have started. Back when medicine was a rumor and faith fought disease with incense and prayer. She continues. They traveled east to west, carrying vials, cures, or maybe something else. You feel a chill. They say the guild wasn't just fighting plague, she whispers. They were fighting entropy, chaos, randomness, and they won. A pause. But at what cost? You resurface from the Undercity just as morning arrives. Right on time, of course. People smile at you precisely. Not too much, not too little. Everything hums. You pass the clockmaker again. He's adjusting gears. You notice his fingers? Too thin, almost metallic. He glances at you. Smiles. Ticks. You walk faster. At home, you toss the forbidden poem onto your desk. The ink shimmers faintly, as if freshly written. You stare at the words again, whole and hollow. Then behind you, a sound, a cough, wet, human, real. You turn slowly. The child from before stands in your doorway, her cheeks flushed, eyes glassy. I think, she whispers, I broke the system. You don't move. Outside, the clock tower skips a beat. Just once. And the city listens. The city is quiet now. Not silent, but quiet in a way that feels unnatural, like a music box winding down. One beat is missing. Just one. But it echoes everywhere. In the bakery shutters that hesitated. In the lamplight that flickered too early. In the gaze of the clockmaker, now absent from his post. And most of all, in the child's fevered breath, as she lays curled on your couch, cheeks burning, eyes fluttering. She coughed. Only once. But in this world, that's enough. You pace your apartment. The poem lies open again, its ink seeming darker now, more urgent. Beneath the poem, you find a second sheet tucked between the pages. A letter. You unfold it with care. To whomever finds this. If you are reading this, then it means the rhythm has finally broken. I tried. I swear I tried to hold it together. But clocks don't bleed, and people do. The signature is smudged, but you recognize the symbol at the bottom, the insignia of the Clockmakers Guild, gears spiraling into a perfect circle, but now scratched through with an X. This wasn't just an old poem. It was a warning. You rush through streets that no longer feel safe. Not because of violence, but because the order is beginning to crack. People glance over their shoulders, dogs bark, and no one shushes them. Somewhere, a church bell rings at the wrong hour. At the base of the city's grand clock tower, the doors stand ajar. That's never happened before. Inside, the scent is strange. Metal, smoke, and something more ancient. Old parchment, wax, a forgotten century. You ascend spiral stairs worn smooth by generations of precision. At the top, the room pulses with ticking. Hundreds, no, thousands of tiny clock faces line the walls. Some turn clockwise, others jerk backward. And in the center of it all, a machine. Bronze, breathing. It hums like a heartbeat, but wrong, off by just a hair. and beside it a figure, cloaked, thin, the clockmaker. He turns slowly, and for the first time you see his face. He's not young nor old. His eyes are silver but tired. His hands, yes, metallic, but not robotic, grafted, human ones, changed. I thought it would hold forever, he says softly as if confessing to no one. You step closer. What is this? He gestures to the machine. Entropy's lock. The world would have burned. The plague would have devoured half of civilization. I stopped it. Your voice is cold. You stopped death. I delayed it, he replies. Shifted the world onto a rail. Predictable, clean, survivable. But it couldn't last. You glance back at the girl's cough echoing in your mind. What's happening now? The system's unraveling, the clockmaker says, placing a trembling hand on the brass heart of the machine. The child is a glitch, a heartbeat out of rhythm, something I never accounted for. And now, she's waking the rest. The room pulses once. A clock falls from the wall, shatters. He doesn't flinch. I built a world immune to randomness, he whispers. But life, it was never meant to be tidy. You ask the question hanging in the air. Can you stop it again? He shakes his head. Not without erasing what's human. Another pause. But you, he steps closer, offering a silver key, impossibly small. You could destroy it. Let the rhythm die. Let the world remember how to bleed, to love, to mourn. You hesitate. Or, you ask. Or reset it, he says. Rewind the clocks, erase the glitch, try again. You stare at the machine. At the key, at the walls of time, each clock a life ticking towards certainty or chaos. You remember the anachronists, their laughter, their mess, their rebellion in broken meter, the girl's cough, the forbidden poem, the paintings that meant nothing but felt like everything. You make your decision and insert the key. The machine groans. It doesn't explode, doesn't shatter. It just stops. One by one, the clocks fall silent. Some fall from their hooks. Some keep turning, erratically now, freely. Outside, thunder rolls, but there are no clouds. It's the city breathing. You descend the tower as people emerge from shops, rubbing their eyes. Some weep, some laugh. A man tosses his hat into the sky and sings off key. And far in the distance, someone coughs again. Not a death sentence, just a sound. Days pass, weeks. Time no longer clicks, it drifts. Lanterns flicker without rhythm. Church bells toll with feeling, not precision. People gather in cafes, not because it's scheduled, but because they missed each other. You see art again. Real art. Flawed, raw, wrinkled canvases. Poems scratched into alley walls. Music in minor keys that make you cry, then laugh, then cry again. And the girl? She recovers. She runs barefoot down cobbled streets that no longer sparkle, but are now alive with chalk drawings and muddy footprints. You pass by the clock tower again. The doors remain open. The gears rust quietly. Some try to fix it. Most do not. They've remembered what it means to live out of sync. The rain had come softly that morning, not in sheets or storms, but in a whisper, like the sky was clearing its throat, uncertain how to greet a world that no longer ticked in time. It drizzled over the rooftops of the city that had once been a masterpiece of order, now softened at the edges like an old painting left in the sun. The cobblestones, no longer scrubbed into gleam, were streaked with chalk drawings and dried petals. The windows were smudged. The markets no longer opened at precisely 7. And yet, everything was alive in a way it had never been. You sat at your desk by the window, watching a girl outside chase pigeons barefoot in the square. Her laughter, raspy but bright, rattled the still air like wind chimes caught in an unexpected breeze. She had survived. The girl who coughed. You remember when her face was flushed with fever? Eyes glazed, her small form curled in the corner of your couch. The sound of her breath, shallow, rhythmic, fragile, had once made you feel like the world could end in the space between inhaling and exhaling. And yet here she was, alive, unafraid. The decision you made at the top of the tower, when the clockmaker offered you the key, when the world held its breath, felt like it had happened in another lifetime. You'd expected the sky to split open, the earth to tremble, or time itself to scream. Instead, the machine had simply stopped. No fire, no explosion, only silence. But not the silence of death, the silence of freedom. The gears no longer turned, the ticks no longer dictated, the clocks no longer controlled. The world had slipped off its rail and stumbled into a reality where people could be late, where things broke and didn't get fixed, where art was painted without commissions and music played in crooked keys. It was a world both messier and more tender than before, a world that breathed. You dipped your pen in ink. The parchment lay open, yellowed by age, rough beneath your fingertips. There were already scratches on it, words half-written, letters erased, lines abandoned. You didn't need it to be perfect. You just needed it to be true. You began to write. To the next one who finds this, if you're holding this paper, it means the rhythm has ended. Or maybe finally begun. The ink bled slightly, blurring the edge of the R. You didn't fix it. Outside, the square began to fill. Not because it was time, but because people wanted to be near each other. The air carried the smell of rising dough, lavender smoke, and paint. Someone strummed a stringed instrument from a balcony. Not a proper song, just notes, like thoughts made into sound. This world was once perfect. Not in the way that poetry is perfect. Not like a sunset or a child's laugh. It was perfect like a blueprint. Sterile, predictable, lifeless. You remembered how it used to feel walking down the city's clean streets, where every window gleamed, every footstep landed in sync, every day an identical performance of the last. A world built to last forever, but only if it sacrificed everything that made it worth living. They feared the Black Death, you see. So much so, they stopped the world from spinning. They locked the future in a cage of glass. They replaced surprise with safety and randomness with rhythm. And for a while it worked. Your hands slowed. You glanced again at the girl in the square. Her dress was stained with dirt. A shoe missing. She held a dandelion in one hand and made a wish. But time is not meant to tick like a metronome. It's meant to stretch, stumble, race ahead, and then double back. It's meant to make room for grief, for growth, for imperfection. You paused, listening. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Not from the great tower, but from someone's window. A handmade chime, its tone uneven, its rhythm off. It sounded honest. I made the choice. I inserted the key. I stopped the machine. I let the world remember what it meant to feel the edges again. You drew a long breath, ink drying slowly as the wind crept through the cracked window beside you. Not everyone welcomed it. Some clung to the old rhythm. They came to the tower with tools, trying to wind the gears again. But it wouldn't tick. Others celebrated. The anachronists danced in public squares, wrote bad poetry on city walls, kissed strangers, and cried without knowing why. I saw a man build a boat out of spoons. A child put a candle inside a jar of honey and called it a sun. These things made no sense. And they made all the sense in the world. You smiled as you wrote that line. It was something the girl had said when she awoke, murmuring through cracked lips, confused but smiling. It doesn't make sense, but it feels right. The clocks are still there. Some still try to live by them. But most people listen to other rhythms now. A cart creaked down the alley behind your home. The wheels squealed. The horse snorted. A boy whistled a lullaby to no one. We lost certainty. We found meaning. You folded the paper once, then twice. The creases weren't even. That was fine. We lost perfection and found beauty instead. You tucked the letter inside the old book of poems, the one that had started it all. Its cover was cracked, spine frayed, but it still hummed with quiet rebellion. Inside, next to your new letter, the old one still sat. Clocks don't bleed, but people do. You didn't erase it. You didn't fix it. You let both pages sit side by side, truths from different times, harmonizing without agreeing. And then, as the sky brightened, you stepped away from your desk, down the stairs, out into the square. The girl saw you first. She ran, arms open, dandelions still in hand. You caught her mid-laugh and spun her, both of you off balance, dizzy in the best way. Around you, the square pulsed, not with schedule, but with soul. An old woman stitched mismatched fabrics into a single wild tapestry. A young man sang in a voice that cracked on every high note, but still made someone cry. Two lovers drew constellations on the pavement with coal and chalk. A baker handed out misshapen bread rolls for free. No one asked the time, and no one seemed to care. Because now, time belonged to them. And you? You let the wind carry your final thought into the air. Unsaid, unwritten, but deeply understood. Let history remember the plague that never came. Let the future remember the price of too much control. And let the world finally begin again, one imperfect breath at a time. And now, dear traveler of time, you've walked through a world where the plague never came, where gears slowed and hearts remembered how to feel. Thank you for staying with us on this long journey through soft cobblestone streets, ticking towers, and fragile human moments. Your presence here tonight means more than you know. If your eyes are heavy now, let them close. If your thoughts are soft, let them drift. And if your heart is full, let it rest. You are safe, you are still, you are home. We invite you now to remain right where you are. Let go of the day. Let the story melt into silence. And allow the next 30 minutes to cradle you with music made not for noise, but for the soul. No more words. Just sound. Just peace. We'll be here, always, waiting to take you on another journey when you're ready. But for now, sleep and let the soft music begin.